Hey, good morning. I'm Patricia Murphy. It's Tuesday. This is Seattle Now. A car-free experiment at Pike Place Market is well underway. We'll head down with local historian Knute Berger to talk about what's changed and how the pilot fits in with the market's many reinventions through the years. But first, let's get you caught up. Oh boy, if you filled up your gas tank lately, chances are it cost you a good bit more. You are not imagining that. Washington State currently has the highest gas prices in the nation, $4.65 a gallon, according to AAA. July 1st, Washington's gas tax increased by 6 cents a gallon. Additionally, AAA says gas supplies on the West Coast are tight right now due to refinery maintenance and pipeline outages in the Pacific Northwest. It's a big day for book lovers and local authors. The annual Washington State Book Awards will be announced at noon. The categories include fiction, poetry, young adult literature, and creative nonfiction. The awards are presented by the Washington Center for the Book. By the way, one of the judges is friend of Seattle Now, Marcus Harrison Green. And the Seattle Storm need a victory tonight, or they'll be bounced from the WNBA playoffs. They take on the Las Vegas Aces at 6:30 at Climate Pledge Arena. The Storm were blown out on Sunday in Game 1 of the 3-game series. If the Storm win tonight, they'll play on Thursday with a chance to advance in the tournament. Check back for more headlines on tonight's episode of Seattle Now. Pike Place Market is one of Seattle's most iconic tourist attractions. It's also one of the city's oldest. It came about in 1907 on a rainy day in August. At the time, tensions were high over the price of food in Seattle. It was expensive, and farmers weren't getting paid enough for it. Middlemen were driving up prices and taking a big cut of farmers' profits. The market solved both problems. It offered a direct-to-consumer business between farmers and customers. This was long before farmers markets were a thing. On its first day, local farmers hauled out carts filled with produce on Pike Place. Shoppers braved a rainstorm, and they bought up everything the farmers had. It was unruly, called a fiasco, and also an instant hit. And the market quickly grew to meet demand.
This street has been chaos. Jammed, since the beginning. It's not a new problem. And there've just been multi-generations of it, and this is the current generation.
That's local historian Knute Berger. He's the host of Mossback Northwest at Cascade PBS. He's been going to Pike Place Market ever since he can remember. He was a regular as a middle schooler in the 60s.
It was so Dickensian in that era. First Avenue had no fancy hotels. It didn't have an art museum. It was Skid Row from one end to the other. And, you'd go into the pawn shops.
Oh, yeah.
There was a magic store that sold porno. There was all kinds of adventures you could have.
Pike Place Market has survived decades of ups and downs, including Seattle's effort to demolish it, the incarceration of many of its Japanese vendors during World War II, and it survived every existential crisis about Seattle's downtown through grassroots support from Seattleites and a workable business model. At the heart of Pike Place Market's resilience is its adaptability. And now in 2025, the market has entered its latest evolution, an effort to make the market car-free. This April, Pike Place launched a pilot program to close the market to traffic, with the exception of delivery drivers and people who are disabled. The pilot's now been extended indefinitely. I met up with Knute at Pike Place on a busy summer day to see how the new dynamic was working. Yeah, we're getting ready to unload some seafood right here.
Meat, seafood, poultry. I sort of have this vision of them opening the back of that truck and the stuff just like a cornucopia flowing out.
The overflowing bounty did not materialize. Not really, just a bunch of boxes. But this place is bustling with tourists, deliveries, and commerce. We met up with Knute right next to Rachel the Pig, or Piggy Bank, the unofficial brass mascot of the market. Knute, glad you're here. Thanks for taking the time to meet us this morning.
Thanks for asking me. I'm glad to be here.
It's funny. We said
the market is car-free, but there are actually still a lot of vehicles around here. So help me understand the scene if you can.
Well, I think what they're trying to accomplish is something of a hybrid, which is clearing the street of the pass-through traffic. And these are tourists who don't know better,
Right.
because if you look at a map or you look at your navigation, it says, oh, you could just drive as a shortcut to Western,
Yep.
And plus you get to see the sights. Well, they're trying to move all that traffic out, leave it more open to pedestrians, but they still have to allow delivery vehicles in for the stall owners and the various shops, because there isn't much place on First Avenue where you could move that to.
What do you think of the move to make the market car-free?
Well, at first I hated the idea because I thought they were just going to close it off to everything. And of course, a lot of the vendors and others are just like, what? That's crazy. And I think in addition to the kind of large crowds, particularly in tourist season that you see coming through, I get not driving through because, I stopped trying to drive through here years ago because it was, you don't want to run anybody over, right? And everything you wanted to see, you could see better on foot. So driving didn't make sense to me, but I didn't like the idea of them adding hardship to the people who have to make a living here. And to make a living here, you have to be able to bring your vehicle in to at least, drop off the produce or whatever else is going on. The other thing I've noticed, and I approve of, is there's more outdoor dining here now.
Yep.
So you can see right here, there's a picnic tables with umbrellas down the street. And they actually have some vendors moving into the street. So as you go down there, there's a place selling peaches, there's a place selling apple juice. And so I think there's a way they want to make the street on both sides, sort of give it more variety, make it a place you're not just walking to, but you're buying stuff or whatever. And I think that's all good.
A lot of people have a hard time imagining why anybody would even drive down this street. I tend to think that locals probably make the mistake once or twice, and then tourists get lured here by an iPhone app or a Google map.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and once you've been stuck in that traffic jam, when you're in a hurry to get someplace, you realize this is a fool's errand. And the market, put a lot of money into parking lots and elevators, so you can park down on Western, you can pop an elevator, you come right up. And I also think the connection with the waterfront, the new, esplanade there, is not only an incredible addition to the market, even though there's nothing historic about it, it's a new thing. I think they did it extremely well, and that's going to bring in more people on foot. So the foot traffic they have now is just going to get more and more.
So now the market is thriving. Tourists are everywhere. Vendors are figuring out how to work around more foot traffic. But Pike Place Market hasn't always thrived. It was almost bulldozed in the 70s. So what happened? Tell us that story.
The brief version is that this area was considered by the Downtown Business Association, by most civic groups that related to commerce and whatnot, as blighted. And the federal government had a lot of money for blight, urban blight. If you declared a neighborhood blighted, you could get federal money to redevelop it. And this was the case with the market. And so the first sort of dawnings of coming for the market, went back to the early 60s. And Wing Luke, who was on the Seattle City Council, died tragically in an airplane accident. He was sort of the first council member to sort of say, ooh, we better do something, they're coming for it. And then Victor Steinbrook and a group of others. Victor Steinbrook was a local architect. He was a professor at the University of Washington and civically very active. He and others stepped in to create a group called Friends of the Market, which is and was an advocacy group to keep the market going. And they just fought this grassroots campaign. The city government wanted the market gone. All the city council, I think they only got one vote in the end. But
Wow.
All the other, all the powers that be But they got it on the ballot, and in 1971, voters said, no, save it.
Wow.
And so that's when they created the various structures to keep it going.
Well, like you said, there's always something going on at the market. It has remained resilient all these years. How has that happened?
It's a combination of things. I mean, you know, the tourists at the Pike Place Market in the 1950s were like members of the Beat generation coming through town. You know, Allen Ginsberg, Gary Snyder, you know, people who came here, Mark Tobey, the artist, people came and found it unique and incredible, and they made paintings, they wrote poems.
Yeah.
There's a great, I think it's a Ginsberg poem about walking up First Avenue in the market. So there was a kind of discovery of a romantic element to it, post-World War II, post-Depression. And the fact that it was kind of down on its heels was part of its charm, that it was a survivor. I think one of the main things is simply that in 1907, it solved a huge problem, which was how farmers could make more money getting affordable food to a rapidly growing urban population. Right?
Fascinating.
Pre-supermarket.
Yeah.
And it still solves the food problem in that farm to table, fishing boat to table way. You know,
I moved here 25 years ago. This place doesn't seem like it's changed an awful lot, but it has. It has. The crowd is different. The tone is different. There's a lot of nostalgia and significance to this place. What is Pike Place Market at its core?
That's a good question. I just think it's a character-rich, nutritionally rich urban neighborhood.
Yeah.
And it's the kind of neighborhood that has proved its resilience in the face of massive development, pre-high rise, literally pre-high rise. And it's still flourishing and finding ways to flourish. I mean, I think that's the other thing, is that you can't stand still. Nobody, even Victor Steinbrück, knew that you could not put it in amber, right? That it would have to adapt with the times. But I think that what I call sort of Pike Place Market originalism, that sense of preservation, is there constantly, not to hold it back, but to keep some of its main assets going, which is the charm, is the history, is the diversity.
Who is this place for, Knute? Because this is loaded with tourists right now. They're waiting for him to throw a fish over there.
Yeah. I prefer not to eat salmon that has been thrown, at least knowingly thrown by the vendor.
Yeah. What are you hoping for the market's future?
Well, I mean, from the standpoint of someone who is simply a citizen and a fan, I hope it keeps doing what it's doing now. I don't have any grand vision for it except to keep as much of its authenticity and its character as possible, and also be commercially viable. And I think there was a way, when you looked at it in 1968, you probably just said, there's no way this is commercially viable. We have to compete with the suburbs. We have to build huge parking lots and high-rises here. Grocery stores are making it obsolete. I mean, in fact, instead of making it obsolete, we now have farmers markets in like every neighborhood in the city, right?
Right, absolutely.
And I think that provides competitive pressure for the market to some degree, but also if you're a local, you can, almost pick any day of the week and go to a nearby neighborhood and get great stuff.
Yeah.
So I think it's interesting that the kind of predictions that they had back in the 60s and 70s about what Seattle should look like, in this case, they were just absolutely dead wrong. And so the fact that it's still here proving that they were wrong is very satisfying to me.
And I joke that this is a touristy place, and it is a touristy place, but it is also one of the places, when I think of Seattle, that I think of real old Seattle, that I can come here and still feel the roots of the city when I wander around.
Yeah, absolutely. When I worked down the street for years at Seattle Weekly, which is down in the so-called Commission District, which were the warehouses that the farmers rebelled against that created the market. You know? And of course, they got turned into offices.
Yeah.
And I would come up here for lunch, you know, several times a week. But I must say, I didn't come in the summer very much.
Oh, boy.
Because I couldn't get seated at some of the places that were my regular spots, like the Athenian, which is still going, thank goodness.
That's my favorite. I love to sit at the Athenian. You get up early, you get into the Athenian, and you can look out the window over a cup of coffee. It's wonderful.
Yeah, it is great, although it still cracks me up that one of the main bars, everyone has their back to the window. That's so old Seattle.
But
it's
if you
like,
sit at the top, you can look down. It's so lovely. I could do without the gum wall. I could probably do without the gum wall.
That is the dumbest attraction ever, but it's so popular. So many people know about it.
I know. You know, what's interesting about this place is it really does kind of not only stand in contrast, but stay in the background of a tech city, where things are always being innovative, and you have this very, very bare bones, basic operation here right in the center of it. How do you think about how the market fits in with all that?
Well, I mean, there are a lot of cities that have or have had large public markets, and some are still thriving. And I think the innovation was in 1907. That was a huge innovation to have a city basically say, "Hey, you can take one of our streets and, put a market there," and it solves this, commercial problem that our farmers are having. And of course, in those days, Seattle was surrounded by farms, right? They were adjacent on the islands, the valleys, and everywhere else, and it opened up those lines. So all of that has now surfaced as the thing everybody wants, farm to table, We want stuff from the grower themselves. So it was innovative then. I think it then re-innovated in the 1970s in coming up with this sort of governance system that's a little unwieldy, but also kind of covers all the bases you want to cover for an urban neighborhood.
Sure.
Right? We're always like, well, we need people on the streets. We need shopping. We need safety. We need to take care of poor people so they're not living in tent cities.
Yeah.
I mean, it solved a lot of problems that are still problems elsewhere, less so here, without, sort of cleansing the entire ecosystem and starting from scratch and pouring asphalt. And I think a lot of the people, I mean, if you go on Instagram or anything else and you see the amount of young people who are cooking, who are into food, who are telling you all these ingredients from all over the world and fresh fruit. I mean, there's a whole younger generation that is living the dream of what something like this market gives you. That's part of the resilience, I think, is no generation is coming along going, oh, God, let's get rid of that.
Old market.
What would downtown be like without it?
Yeah.
And it's actually downtown that is constantly needing to be saved. There is a crisis with downtown, like every 5 to 15 years. And if you go back and look at Seattle from the 1950s to now, there's regularly a downtown crisis. And, it was the suburbs were killing us. We've got to build freeways through. Oh, that didn't work. Well, we've got to get tech here. We've got to remake places. I think the market is more resilient than the rest of the city, despite what it looks like.
Maybe because everything in it is necessary for living.
I think that's true. And now you have a city that's designing itself in such a way with the waterfront development, the cruise ship catering to that, and whatnot. And, we're not doing it by building a Hooters at South Lake Union like we did, right?
Yeah.
We're doing it by encouraging people to come learn about the waterfront, restore some of the waterfront, see the sea life that lives there, and come up here and enjoy the fruits of the sea.
Knute Berger, Mossback, really appreciate it. Thanks for meeting me at the market.
Well, yeah, happy to do it. Glad to be here with you guys.
Thanks for listening to Seattle Now, and hey-o to some of our newest donors, Robert, Michael, Erica, Autumn, Mike, and Teresa. Thank you for supporting us financially. Today's episode was produced by Caroline Chamberlain Gomez. It was edited by Andy Hurst. Our production team also includes Vaughn Jones, Brooklyn Jamerson Flowers, and Paige Browning. Greg Kramer does our theme music. Seattle Now and KUOW Public Radio are members of the NPR network. I'm Patricia Murphy. See you soon.